those people who don't have the time to dedicate every Sunday or everything, but can step in when we need them, is getting them trained up to be able to fill positions as needed. All right. Training as a team will allow us to develop a well-planned, proactive response rather than uncoordinated, sporadic reaction to a threat. And one of my best examples of this was this Air Force security team that was on the Talil base in Iraq. And we got ordered. My team had just happened to be on base at that time. We were back refitting and getting a new mission set. We got ordered. The Air Force security team, with the exception of the sniper unit, just became a gaggle. I saw trucks going every which way. No one was guarding the gates. No one had moved to any positions to support the Iraqi security. They were flying around, and I was like, all right, what's going on? When we debriefed with them, we asked them what had happened. Well, the call had gone out saying that the north end of the base had been attacked. And where that came from, nobody knows. It was probably what we call MEG, interference. Somebody was on the frequency, said that, and everyone started doing that. Well, at the same time, the security lieutenant that was in charge, or captain that was in charge of the security unit, said it was coming from the east side south. So you have these two different groups that split and go different directions, right? And there's no coordination. They're not talking to each other. And in the same time, you add in the mix the 4th Infantry Division that was there, and they're jumping in vehicles and they're flying around. And so it got really chaotic. But in the aftermath, what we found out was there was no communication. They just were not communicating. And there were no clear roles assigned to that secondary unit. So they just went off and thought they were doing the right thing, but they weren't. Right, so those are things to think about. It keeps us from being sporadic. It keeps us from doing silly things. We kind of talked with my team, when we do security, I'll say, if this happens, I would like you guys to lock the doors. I would like you to make the 911 call. I would like, so there's kind of an idea of what people will be doing if something happens. Okay. Any questions?
Where did you get the PowerPoint template?
The PowerPoint template is on PowerPoint. I just added the stuff to it. I made my own template. Church security teams are essential for ensuring the safety and well-being of the congregation through clearly defined roles and responsibilities. A well-structured team helps create a safe worship. And I don't know, but I've noticed that people keep an eye on us when we're moving around. We had 2 individuals came into the congregation a couple of weeks ago. They came in late. They were dressed in black and tan. And so I kind of perked up and said, Even though I wasn't on security, I went ahead and moved to the center of the room. And Perry was on that side, and he moved in, sat in behind him. And once it was all over with, it was Gabe's cousin. And a friend. But anyhow, after the service was over, I went ahead and approached him, met him, greeted him and said hello, and then found out who they were. And then Perry and I were talking, and I was like, I saw that you moved over and sat down and, close proximity behind him. He says, yeah, they were really distracted because they saw you moving and they watched you the entire time you were moving around the room. And that's kind of our job. If there is a threat, they're going to identify who we are, and we're going to get into threat assessment right now. But the most likely incident, if somebody comes into the congregation, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to sit on the outside rows where they can move. And they're going to sit around elderly people because they're less likely to be attacked or pushed or disturbed by an elderly person, right? And they're smart enough and savvy enough to figure that out. We're really good about keeping the front row kind of filled with people. So more than likely, if you see someone come in and they look for a spot that's on the outside, it kind of gives you a clue. And if you move in a manner that gets their attention, now all of a sudden their attention's off of whoever they're there for, and it's on you. And I know we send out alerts, when a member has a restraining order on somebody, or there's possible, could be a possible conflict with someone else. We kind of let people know that. And so we keep an eye out for that stuff. But there are situations that could arise within the congregation that we don't even know about. It could be between 2 individuals over a fence or something stupid, right? and it could elevate and escalate. But if they know that we're moving around in there, and they know that we're being vigilant, they're less likely to do something there. No, this one's.
Makes sense.
A well-structured team helps create a safe worship environment, manages security risk, and allows the church to focus on its mission. Regular training and communication are crucial for maintaining a proactive security posture. And so it goes back to communicate, and know what your position is. So again, my whole thought process is once we're done with this 6 weeks of courses, I'm going to develop scenarios, and then once a month or twice a month, we will have scenario training, and we'll go down to the school and run through scenarios. This is what could happen here. This is if we have a medical, who are we going to approach? Who are we going to have deal with the medical? And again, I would like to go out and recruit more people, not just for security, but people to handle communication, people to handle the medical side. And we have one paramedic that I know of, Nikki. I haven't seen her at church for a couple months, but
She's in Burns.
oh, okay. I mean, if you guys know of anybody that has medical training or is an EMT or wildland firefighter, EMT, EMTA, EMTB or C, and we can get them on board, that helps out a lot. I mean, I have basic first aid, I have combat triage, I have some other things, and I can definitely render assistance, but there are things, as long as it involves blood or holes, I'm good at that. Anything else, I'm not really good at. Okay, so if we can get those people in those positions, it will help build our team and also help us, as not positive security just isn't, the physical security force. Positive security is having the people in place to help out with whatever's needed for the congregation at the time. All right, key roles and responsibilities. So we don't have a surveillance system. I just left this in there. It's kind of a thought process is, if we get large enough, if we get the money and we build a church, we're probably gonna have a security system. So we'll have someone that does that. Collaboration with law enforcement, build relationships with local law enforcement to enhance security and response capabilities. We have several members of our congregation that are police officers or sheriffs. That really helps out a lot. And in those situations, they can't act as a security team member because of state law, but what they can do is they can act as a police officer in the situation. Okay. And so knowing who those guys are and knowing where they generally like to sit, that kind of stuff is really helpful as a security team member. So you know who to contact if something goes, sideways on us. All right, training and drills. Conduct regular sessions and drills to prepare for emergencies. And this kind of goes back to what I had mentioned before. If we start doing training, and that's medical training, that's, and we're not really gonna deconflict anything, okay? What we're gonna do is delay a situation, and then the police are going to show up and they're going to do the deconfliction for us, right? Because deconfliction is a long process, right? But there are ways to delay a situation. And it's really funny, when I went through my deconfliction training in the military, one of the first things they said was a smile and hello slows people down instantly. 99% of the population. There's that 1% that's gonna walk up, you say, hi, how you doing? And they're gonna go clap, and it's all over. But hopefully we don't have any of those people here. All right, enforcing safety measures, implementing and maintaining safety protocols, including child safety and emergency response strategies. So one of the questions I got here about a month ago was from one of the parents, one of our new parents, asking what our procedure was to make sure that the right kids went home with the right people after class. And I said, well, you have to sign in. And then that person has to go get that child. And I'm like, oh, well, you don't have name tags? No, yes, we put name tags on the kids. That's up to the parents to do that. They said, oh. And so they didn't seem like they really had a warm fuzzy about that. And I actually brought that up. And I don't know if we changed any of the policy or procedures, But what I know is a rover in the back, I keep an eye on that building, and I know who goes in and out. And it's like this last weekend, there was someone who looked familiar, but didn't really look familiar, and walked up, was very nice, but said he was gonna go talk to his wife in the classroom. And I said, okay, so I went ahead and watched him move, and I was just like, it's not that I didn't feel right about it, I wanted to make sure, so I just kind of followed him. Made sure that after he walked in, I came in about 20 seconds behind him and stood at the door. And then, come to find out, once he took his hat off, I knew who it was. So, he had on a stocking hat, threw me off. So once he took his hat off, I realized who it was, and so I went ahead and left. But, I mean, those are the kind of things, I mean, people.
Was it Roger?
Huh? No, it wasn't.
I resemble that one.
So, and that's kind of safety measures that I'm talking about. It's just, keeping an eye on the kids when they're out in the playground. Yes, their parents are out there. There are some parents, there are some older kids out there. But at the same time, we need to keep an eye on those kids, all right? Because all the gates are open. Anyone can walk into that compound. Sure. And it just drives me crazy that back gate going into the back door of the church or the gym is always unlocked. And I'm like, oh, if I step around this corner for half a second, somebody can actually get to that and get in behind me. I'll never see them. So that's one of the things that kind of.
Which one are you talking about?
On the east end of the building, the back side of the gym.
Where that fans run away?
Yeah, there's that
church.
little gate there that goes in between the two buildings.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it goes right to that back door.
There's not even a latch on the gate.
No.
Maybe what we could do is, just to address that, get a link with chain and a lock while we're there.
Yeah, I think that
As long as we remember to take it with us.
Yeah.
Take it off when you're done.
Yeah.
The other thing you'll find is that back door is propped open all the time.
All the time.
I mean, I go check that door almost every time, and I'm gonna say 1 out of 5 times I check that door, it's blocked open. They've put a rock there or something to just barely hold it open.
Yeah. Yeah, Linda Brown went through there a couple weeks ago and I yelled at her. I was like, what are you doing? Patrolling the area regularly, check premises to deter threats and respond quickly to incidents. So kind of my theory on this is if we can keep it in the parking lot, it's the best thing that can happen. If we keep it out in the parking lot, and David and I and some other people we've talked, if something, I always tell them, if something occurs, I'm gonna try and keep it in the parking lot, and my first request is that you guys just basically lock the door so people can't just barge in if they get past me. And that slows them down enough, and then, make the 911 call. So, and hopefully EMS if I'm down in a parking lot. But yeah, it prevents that person from being able to gain access immediately to the building. Supervising entry points. So we have ushers. There's always someone from security at the front doors, and someone from security at the back door. That one side door, a lot of times there's not anyone over there, but I am at the corner watching both sides, so I can kind of keep an eye on that if somebody approaches that. And then we are not a big enough church yet that we have 1,000+ people, but what they're talking about monitoring entry points is your larger churches like your mega churches where they literally have tens of thousands of people coming in. They post security at the door. A lot of times they'll have metal detectors. And so they have systems in place because of the volume of people that are transiting in and out of the building. They have systems in place that helps them kind of keep it more secure. All right, specific team roles. So security team leader, we talked about this earlier. So the security team leader is just the person designated on that team for the day who's gonna step up and take charge. And then based on their training is gonna basically delegate out if something happens, and then the other team members, the external rovers, interior rovers, basically patrol the outside, maintain a visible security presence, screen attendees for any possible threats, and respond to incidents outside the congregation. Preferred method. Let's keep it outside. Oversee the entry points and secure the children ministries and private areas. And we don't have any private areas within the church, but a lot of churches do. They have rectories. They have different things inside the church, kitchens, that kind of stuff. And that would be one of the responsibilities of the rovers. Communications control manages communication among the team members for clear information flow during incidents. Normally the team leader of the day, unless otherwise assigned, and calls 911 during an emergency. And again, knowing these positions, knowing the responsibilities of each of these positions, lets you know that if, let's say that David's team leader for the day, he's out front and he winds up having to encounter somebody out in the parking lot. And he lets us know on the radio, all stations, this David, station 1, I'm going to approach an individual that looks agitated. That tells us right then as a group that our team leader is now involved. It is no longer a team leader. Once you step out of that role as team leader and you start taking direct action, you can't be a team leader anymore. Someone else that's not involved has to step back and take that role.
Mm-hmm.
That means one of us would pick that up and say, yeah, this is Sam, station 2, assuming duty as team leader, making 911 call. And that way everybody in the group knows the 911 call is being made, and then I'm going to start moving in that direction so I can get better information for 911. If David's unable at the time to start passing that to us. Medical response lead, we currently don't have one of those. Coordinates medical emergencies and ensures first aid CPR trained members are available. So, like I said, if you guys know of anybody, I would like to get an EMT or a paramedic, or even somebody that's advanced life-saving qualified to act as that medical lead. And then the rest of us that do have CPR and some of these other trainings can assist as necessary. Internal rovers, they control the premises to maintain visible security presence, respond to incidents, secure doors during an incident outside, and alert local law enforcement attending the service. So the internal people, really, when you hear the call go out that something's going on outside, the first thing that you would do is lock the doors and then approach, Jeff, whoever's in there. If it's Brian or if it's, Jeremy, whoever happens to be attending service, and let them know that something's going on, that we've called 911. And a lot of times they come in uniform because they're actually on duty that day. And so they'll probably be the first one to be able to respond to that call. Okay, front door greeters, contact, welcome attendees, monitors the entryway. So our greeters are volunteers. They don't have any security training, and that's where that handoff piece comes in. If you see our greeter in what appears to be a verbal conflict with somebody, it's our responsibility to move in, do the handoff, take that situation, try to get it outside if possible, and move ourselves into a position where that greeter can disengage and get out of the way. Because usually it's a husband and wife team, and the last thing we need is one of our congregation get punched in the face or something like that. So, any questions? We've been pretty fortunate in the sense that we haven't had any real major incidents, and we've had a few minor things go on. We've dealt with them either outside the church or outside the congregation itself through the elders. So, and they've been handled. But this is the issue. We are a growing church. We are a godly church. And that draws attention to those people that want to do people harm. And not that I'm a big fan of the Catholics, but the Catholics learned very early on. And one of the archdiocese responsibility is the security of the church and warding off evil. And they actually do exorcisms and things of that nature in their diocese. And they notice that when they actually have a qualified exorcist come into the diocese, the number of people that are afflicted increases because they're drawn to that. So that's something that we need to keep in mind as we grow. We're going to start drawing attention. And when we draw attention, we also draw bad attention. So just something to keep in mind. All right, so we're going to go over some couple of incidences that happened here a while back. Risk strategy group, they they've got a really good webpage, so if you ever get the opportunity to jump on there, they've got a lot of good stuff on there, a lot of good incidents and results of incidents, and then they kind of break it down, what happened and what was right, what was wrong. So they're really good ARs and after action review. Sorry, military comes out. So first one is going to be, it's called Two Churches, Two Threats, One Clear Lesson. All right. In the past few weeks, two churches faced armed threats. One stopped an active shooter, the other prevented a potential mass shooting before it started. Both situations could have ended in tragedy, but they didn't, and not because of luck. They ended the way they did because someone on site was trained, aware, and ready to act. So, first one is a truck, two handguns, and a team that didn't freeze. On June 22nd, a man showed up at the Cross Point Community Church in Wayne, Michigan. He was wearing a tactical vest and had a rifle. He waited outside during the worship service with about 150 people inside. The gunman opened fire near the entrance. A church deacon jumped into his truck and rammed the shooter. The two armed security team members then fired, killing the attacker. One of them was shot in the process but survived. Police said the shooter had a hit list and intended to carry out a mass attack. The pastor said that what stopped him was a trained team. They run drills, they talk through scenarios, and they didn't panic. So this is what happens when you have those slides in your head. You've done the scenarios, you walk through the drills, you have the slides in your head. Instead of thinking about what you need to do next, you just do it, okay? And remember what I said about the System 1, System 2 piece? The more of that stuff that's in System 1, the more time you have to think about what you're doing, okay? And instead of thinking about, oh, am I aiming straight? Is there something behind the target? If that's all System 1, you don't have to worry about that. It's like, all right, where's the target? He's down, the truck just hit him, all right? And he's still a threat, we need to stop the threat now. All right, instead of thinking about all the plethora of other things that go along with putting a bullet in somebody, okay? All that becomes automatic. You think about, okay, he's still a threat, let's take care of the threat. Okay. So this one ended with the shooter being shot. No shots fired, but still a threat. In Naples, Florida, a man walked into the lobby of the Manatile Davida Church in July. He told staff he was a trained killer. Then he asked how much money it would take to stop a mass shooting. He was carrying a loaded handgun and had 3 full magazines in his pocket. Staff moved children's safety, called law enforcement. Deputies arrived and arrested the man without incident. He was taken into custody and charged under the Baker Act. His weapon had a round in the chamber. No one was harmed, but his intent was clear. Okay, again, that's that delaying. They didn't de-escalate the situation. They delayed that person and kept him from pulling that weapon until police could show up and take care of the situation. That's one thing that I can't emphasize enough. We are not law enforcement, right? And we're not heroes, right? What we are is we are a security team, and we're there to prevent something bad happening. All right. God forbid it comes to having to put your life on the line for it. But if you have the right training, you shouldn't have to do that. You should be able to cause a delayed action or a delay long enough for law enforcement to get here. Primal's not that big of a town. I think max probably response time is going to be maybe 5 minutes. Less than that if we have police in the congregation at the time. You're talking 30 seconds maybe for them to respond. So those are things to think about. I had a good friend of mine. He won the Navy Star or Navy Cross for an action that he did. And he said, heroes are just ordinary people who use their training when others don't. And that's what it comes down to. We're not out there to be Superman. We're out there to do a job, to keep the congregation safe, and to keep people from getting hurt. Okay? And if we train and we do it right, we can prevent ourselves from getting hurt. We can prevent the person that's intending harm from getting hurt, and our congregation at the same time. All right, both staff are volunteers who spotted the threat early. Both responded before law enforcement arrived. Both had trained for moments like this. One church used force, the other use calm direction and quick thinking. Both actions save lives. And that's what it comes down to. If you train and you have those slides in your head, you're going to make decisions that are based on good information. You're not going to overreact, you're not going to underreact to a situation. You're less likely to have your brain go into fight or flight, all right? Because you have something that you know you can do. It's those moments when you don't, that the anxiety, the fear, those things take over, and then your body does what your body's supposed to do, right? And it either fights or it runs. Okay. So, well, there's one other thing, but it's freeze. there are people who do just lock up. I had a pilot do that to me one time in an emergency situation. He literally vapor locked in the seat. Lessons to think about. Most attacks aren't stopped by chance. They're stopped by people who are paying attention and who have been given permission to act. This doesn't mean the church needs a full security team with firearms, but it does mean someone needs to be watching. Someone needs to know what to do when words or behaviors go sideways. And we're going to have a class on threat recognition. I'm not going to make you guys profilers, don't get me wrong, but I am going to show you some things, key things to look for in people that are disturbed. And we've seen them in the church. We've seen the drug addicts come in that are sitting there just, out of their gourd, and we've also seen the people that are severely depressed and mumbling to themselves and those sorts of things. Those are some things, but there are other things that you can look for. And this is one thing that I learned in the military. 90% of stopping a threat is gut reaction. God gave us the sense to be safe, right? And when we feel a threat, it's probably a threat, okay? Especially if you're trained and you have the confidence of your training. And all of a sudden your stomach goes, there's just something wrong about this situation. Probably a good idea to start to intervene and let people know. All right. Every church needs a plan. Every plan needs to be practiced. Every team needs clarity on what they're allowed to do when time is short. The threat doesn't always walk in screaming. Sometimes it talks calmly and carries a loaded weapon, just like that guy in Florida. The churches that respond best aren't the biggest or the richest. They're the ones that decide ahead of time who's responsible when something goes wrong. If your church hasn't had that conversation, now it's time. Don't wait for the headline with your name on it. So like I said, these guys do really good post-action analysis, and they point out the things, and they're not harsh, they're not beating on these people. They go out and they go, okay, this is where you could have trained better, or you guys did a great job because your training was spot on. Okay. Right? And if you look in the back of your flyers, I got some questions back there. Oh, questions aren't there. Printed the wrong flyer. Sorry. All right, so one of the questions was, what can we do as a security team to help bring more members to the security team? And kind of my thought process is we're at the point where we have 2 services now. We do a morning service and a late morning service. Last weekend we had 51 kids in the classrooms. We had 4 classrooms with 51 kids. So not the threat, but the possibility of having a threat is expanding for us. And so the more people that we could have that were rovers, that were team leads, that could be on duty at each service is so much better, would be so much better. Just the presence of someone in the room that people know is on security is really stupendous. It has a massive effect on somebody's mindset. So if you guys have any ideas or you know of anybody, I would appreciate it if you could start recruiting and asking them to come join us. All of these lessons that we do, we're going to make available to people. I told Perry and a couple other people that I'll meet with them individually on their days off so they can get the training. And we'll go over basically what we did. We'll just take my laptop and we'll sit down and have the discussion. The other thing is out of these 2 churches, what was the key thing that they kept pointing out? that they did right.
They're prepared.
They were prepared. They trained
They train.
and they were prepared. You know, and in that one case where they had armed guards outside, you know, those two individuals did what they were supposed to do. One of them got shot in the process, survived it. And that's kind of an extreme case. But for the most part, most of what we're going to deal with are just going to be agitated individuals. That and I hate to say, or it's good to say this, Prineville is an open carry town. You know, the state of Oregon's open carry, and we're redneck, and people know that, and they know that there's a lot of people that are going to be in a congregation that are carrying, not just security. People carry it when they go to church, and that's just how it is. And so that kind of a threat isn't as big as the person who just, I hate to say it, but is possessed and wants to do harm to Gabe, wants to do harm to, you know, our one of our leaders, and they will single that person out and go after them. And so we need to be cognizant of that. We need to be cognizant of people who appear to be agitated or appear to be too friendly. That's another situation. Someone who comes in, yes.
So what do you think is the number one deterrent for people to sign up for security? Are they afraid of getting hurt? They don't understand the process? What is the number one thing you think that?
I would almost guess it would be the time piece.
Time, it's just time.
Yeah. I really would. Because I know a lot of people that have come on and then left, and it's just because they just don't feel like they have time.
Okay.
You know, but this is the thing that I like, is that we have two services now, so that you can actually go to one of the services, yeah, and then be security for the other service.
Sure.
And so that's something that we would like to kind of look at. And this is kind of my whole thought process is, even if I'm at service and I'm not on security, I'm still on security.
Sure.
I'm still keeping an eye out. I'm still watching people. I'm still going to put myself in a position where I can intercede if necessary, if need be. And that's just kind of how we have to think about it. I have the luxury of 26 years of this kind of training. We have police officers that have, you know, 20, 25, 30 years of this kind of training, and they know what to do.
I don't mean to interrupt, but do you think the other military guys, do they have the same kind of a sense when they're there, like the CJs and Chris Ons?
CJ's pretty dialed.
Those guys
Sometimes
like
we
that.
have to throttle them back a little bit.
Would it be good for us to have a meeting with them and say, you know, you're not on security, whatever, but this is what our security team does, so they can be aware as well?
I think it probably wouldn't be a bad idea. I mean, we've had a couple.
When all you military guys are there.
Yeah, we've had a couple of people that were ex-military that probably just due to their situation, probably not good for security.
Okay. Sure, makes sense.
Yeah, but you know, that doesn't mean, you know, later down the line, as their healing happens, that they couldn't. You know, because we do. I mean, I've met with a couple of guys that just, I don't know if guys would remember Michael. He came to church for about a month and a half. Some of the hardest, heaviest PST I've ever seen, or PTS I've ever seen. I mean, he had a hard time verbalizing. And I don't know where he went. He hasn't responded to me, and I've lost track of him. But I hope that he went and sought help, because he was. It's been a long time since I saw someone like that.
Thank you.
And another question I have for you guys is, do you have experience or a background or anything that you can think of that could help us be better at what we do? Are there things that you notice that we do that you go, I wonder why they do that right now? Because we can add that to this training and fix those holes that we may have that we don't see. So if you guys see anything or you think of anything, you know, let me or Ron know, and we can get it incorporated in our training.
Excellent.
So my question to you guys is, how do you feel about once a month or twice a month scenario training? You guys think you have the time for that?
Make time.
Okay.
That's the most important thing we can do.
Yes. And like I said, we'll have to arrange it with school, because obviously I want to train at the facility that we're going to be protecting. Okay, goes back to the train how you fight how you train type of thing. So if you get to, and at the same time, we don't have anything in writing yet, but what I would like to do is write down position responsibilities and name positions, and actually build a map that shows each position and each position's area of responsibility. And then that way, as people come onto the security team, or even as you take a position, you know where you're responsible for. Okay, and that kind of clarifies, you know, where am I supposed to be, what am I supposed to be doing, and hopefully, when we get through communication, we'll line out a lot of those positions. We went over what really, you know, as a rover, you're just out there being a body. You're being present, showing people you're out there. And you know, when I see you guys come in, you know, I'm standing on the back, and you know, it's good to see everybody come in. I enjoy that. Good shake hands, grip and grin. So, any questions for me?
I don't wanna open a can of worms, but Jerry Boyd is very heavy on training the congregation. What's your thought on that?
It would not hurt, especially the next time we go into small group, is to have the leaders of small group just walk through some scenarios. You know, as if you see the door lock, and you see people moving in a direction, you know, just be prepared to either A, get on the floor, or B, stay where you're at. Or if you have training and you can provide assistance, to provide assistance. You know, just ask the nearest security person, is there anything I can do to help? And so if you give just that little bit of training, gives them something to think about, rather than think about, all right, what's happening? What do I need to do now? You know, and they start getting that rabbit in the headlights kind of thing going on, you know.
Okay.
The worst thing you can have is not have people aware of something that could possibly happen, and then have a shotgun blast go through a window, and what's gonna happen? Everyone's gonna go the opposite direction as hard as they can go. But if they know, if something like that happens, get on the floor, security's gonna take care of this. The police will be here in 2 or 3 minutes if they're not already present. Okay, so rather than stampeding the door and hurting each other, get on the floor, take care of the person next to you, right? Because we have a lot of elderly that come to our church, and a shock like that, we're probably gonna have some medicals. So.
Say, are we gonna have any clear identifiers that who's gonna use security and who's off? Like, I know with my previous experience with security at AV, we have clear identifiers of who is in the security team. For one, they have the shirt and they have, you know, they're armed and things like that. Then there's other people, like I was in the roving side of it, and our colors were different, more kid friendly, because we're part of roving in the kids wing type of thing. But then the heavier group that were trained up, they're mostly up by the pastor in congregation, but the other rovers, they were non-lethal in that kind of way.
So this is something, or we've talked about this, about the uniform, if you want this or that. What I really think we should do, since we have the badge system anyway, is just security have a badge that says security. It's no different than, you know, Troy's badge says Troy, you know, and you know, Ron's badge, you know, but it's just a badge that says security, and that way when you see that, you know that person's on security. Because we're all gonna have the same responsibilities. Yeah, we're not gonna delineate this or that, it's just what station am I at today, you know, so. But I think that's the best way to address that, so there is a clear identification, but it doesn't stand out from what we're actually doing in the church. If that makes sense.
Training we had over there at Eastside, they talked about that, but having clearly who's on security, so if there was a scenario and law enforcement came, they knew who was on security and who wasn't, so if you had a gun out on somebody, they know not to
Right.
shoot you.
Yeah, that'd be the worst scenario in the world, plugged in the back twice while you're trying to hold somebody. No, I think that's a good idea, and we'll have to talk to, the sheriff's office and, you know, we can liaise with whoever we have in the church there. And just let them know, you know, what I used to do when I was at COIDC was we would send 911, who our duty officers were. So if we got calls for fire, they knew who to call to deal with the fire. And we could do the same thing, you know, these 3 people are on security today, or these 4 people are on security today. So if something does go down. Or when you make the 911 call, you can just say, we have a trained security officer in the parking lot with the individual, and he is armed.
That's a great idea, yeah.
Right, and then that way they know when they approach, that there is somebody out there that's armed, you know, and that they're with the church. And hopefully, whoever's made the stop is given a clear description of the individual they're stopping, right, and why they're out there with them. Right. Like I said, you know, just because we have radio and a gun doesn't mean that, you know, we're gonna stop everything. But what it does mean is that we can communicate to somebody else that get that message to 911, right? And to the people that are inside, that can then pass that on to any police officer or sheriff that's inside, so that they can come out. And fortunately for us, we know a lot of the police officers and a lot of the sheriffs, and they know who we are, so that helps out a lot. Those are all good questions. I'm enjoying this. Anything else?
So I addressed the congregation one time, and I think it was at a time when maybe a lot of people in the church didn't know we had a security team.
Right.
But it was sort of like time to tell them, and, you know, basically all I said was, you know, in a group this size, I'll bet there's 15 or 20 people in here that are carrying, and what we would like you to do is just get on the floor.
Yeah.
And hopefully our training will take care of the problem, but, I think in Prineville, one of the issues we could have is a lot of cowboys.
You got a whole room of John Wayne's.
Yep.
So there was an incident, that had this when I'd come back on leave, but it happened out near Joseph. And a couple had beaten an old couple, a rancher and his wife, stolen their van, and then took off. Well, the van broke down, so they took off, went up in the rim rocks. Well, the wife died. So the locals, being the locals out there, got together, figured out where they were, found the van, tracked them up into the rocks, and shot over 900 rounds into that group, those 2 people up there. And that's what goes through my head when you say, you know, because I think about it all the time. If something went down and somebody came in shooting, there would be I would assume at least 4 or 5 people returning fire. And that gets scary.
Oh,
That gets super scary.
There was a discussion we had with the rodeo board, we had both city, county, talking about, you know, emergency, you know, all of that plan. I said, look, if somebody walks in here to do harm, the harm gonna be done is gonna be the crossfire from every other
Oh, yeah.
cowboy here that's been drinking Coors Light in Pendleton for 3 hours. You know, the damage is insurmountable at that point, you know, and it's why we begged, pleaded, and cried to get more police officers on site, because the Trident security team or whoever we had hired.
Yeah. Yeah, it gives me the heebie-jeebies, because I just think about going through a close quarters battle and the amount of repetitions it took to start trusting these people behind me, you know. And you get your 15 walkthroughs and your dry fires, and after that you go live, and it gets that's nerve-wracking to have somebody that you're not quite sure about, you know, but you know he's loaded and ready to go behind you. And as you're coming through the door, not only are you shooting, but you're having to figure out where everyone else is at and who they're shooting at, and making sure you're not stepping in their line of fire. And then, you know, and can you imagine, you know, 5, 6 people standing up in church and just blasting away? Yeah.
Well, I can say that when I went through the scenario training that Ron put on at the church in Bend, every one of them, I stood like a deer in the headlight, because I'd never been through anything like that. And my brain was trying to figure out what's going on. So I encourage you guys guys to do that.
Yeah.
You've been through it, and it was just, every time we went through one, I was just standing like, I have no idea what's even going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so it's,
I
it's
agree.
important for sure.
So, kind of give you an idea about how I conduct scenario training is we, number one, we read through the scenario, what the situation is.
That's good.
Yeah, and then number two, we do a walkthrough. Yeah, and we assign people positions, and we assign them responsibilities within a scenario. And then we do the walkthrough of how this is gonna go. And then I like to go at half speed. Everybody go at half speed. And then we critique ourselves after that half speed run. And once we feel confident, then we go full speed.
That's excellent.
And we do it 2 or 3 times, and we'll critique every time after we do a full speed run too. And what that does is it builds confidence. You know, it truly does. I talked about CQB. We did basically 15, 20 walkthroughs, and then you speed up, and then you speed up, and each time you're getting critiqued. You know, their way of critiquing uses a lot of F words. DA, idiot.
It sounds like college football,
Yeah.
honestly.
But once you get through those and then you start your half speed, your first half speed live fire run, you do have confidence. Like I said, you still, the hair in the back of your neck stands up when you hear that rifle behind you firing off. It's like, ooh, okay, there it is. But eventually you get to the point where you can run through these things so quickly and everyone knows exactly what they're doing. And you can change target positions, you can change, you know, rooms that are hostile, rooms that are not. You can change all that stuff, and these people react properly because, again, you go from system 2 to system 1. And they're thinking about the situation, not what they need to do, because they're doing it already.
Excellent.
Any questions? All right, that's all I got. We actually did an hour. I'm surprised.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
You're
man,
welcome.
that's good info, really good.